not doing anything work related, but it's.
I'm up on them 4-3, by the way. So
Are you? Okay, good, good. Well,
Hey,
what do we got? What do we got for the show today, Mike?
yeah, we got a lot of things to talk about. Some interesting stuff. Fumble versus backward pass. A couple of situations that we'll end up talking about today. Lions get a little tricky, and they score a touchdown, but it didn't count. We'll talk why. The Cards get called for a holding penalty. Was it in the end zone? Was it out of the end zone? A safety? And then the Cleveland's almost interception in the end zone, a real close play. So we'll talk about that, but we also now are doing opening calls, our opening thoughts before we get into the meat of the program. Dean, give me your opening thoughts.
Yeah, my opening thought is something that has been in the works, and I really want to push this forward, and it's universal rules alignment. And when we talk about football in America, right? American football, you have Pee Wee football that has a certain set of rules. Then you have high school football, and then you've got college football, and then you've got NFL football. And the rules are slightly different at each level. And when we're talking about, just to give you a sense of how complicated these rules are, right? The college rule book, 141 pages, and then you have another 83 pages of approved rulings. The NFL rulebook, 87 pages, and then you've got 112 pages of approved rulings, which are specific play situations to add context to the actual rule language. And that's not even talking about replay, where you have hundreds and hundreds of play situations. So for me, it's let's start with player safety. And there was a meeting a couple of years ago that I was a part of with the competition committee from both the NCAA and the NFL, members of the officiating department, and had a good long discussion with video about player safety rules and how can we bring them closer together. Because if you think about it, a young player that's coming up, if that player constantly has to adapt and change the way he plays according to the rules, it becomes harder. There's a learning curve. So if we could get these rules more in line with each other. So if I'm a high school player, now I go to college, I've got a set of rules that when I jump to the NFL, if I make it that far, I don't have to readjust or relearn a whole bunch of new rules. And again, I get it. It's not going to be absolutely perfect. You're not going to be perfectly aligned because the NFL game is different. You have different athletes. College football has different levels. Division I, autonomy 5 athlete is different from the Division III athlete. But if we can do something to get these rules closer together on the player safety end, I think that will make the game better, and it will just make the experience for everyone involved better. That's my thought. Mike, what do you got?
Yeah, I like that, Dean. And I think there has been steps a little bit where it's horse collar, one has followed the other, and then you got the 5-yard face mask disappearing on both levels. But that's a really solid point. Mine is, forget about the fact that all crews are going to be consistent. I mean, it's impossible. Do you realize how fast this game is and how many things happen on every single play? And so holding has been, there's been so few calls this year. The average per game has been down to like 2 per game. And Indianapolis got called for 9 yesterday. 9 holding penalties on one team. I can't think of any time that I've been involved with the league that I've seen 9 called on one team. And by the way, only 2 called on Green Bay, yet our former executive producer, Mike Davis, thinks that somehow the officials screwed the Packers. But 9 holding penalties, are you kidding me? But the thing that was fascinating to me, Sean Hockley and his crew, most of them were on running plays and inside runs where you would get a grab right at the point of attack. And in this game, which was our A crew with a bunch of cameras, they were able to isolate on each one of the calls. And when you look at them, they were really all good calls. And they were shot from the position on the field where you got the exact look that Sean and his umpire, the two that were making most of those calls, you got that same exact look. And so you look and say, that's ridiculous to have 11 holding calls in a game and 9 against one team. But maybe you got to look at Sean Hockley and his umpire and say, hey, Paul King, too, they were good calls. And you heard Troy and you heard Joe support every single one of them. And they were right at the point of attack. But let's get rid of this notion that everybody should only call 2 per game, that all crews are going to call, that you want them to call the same amount of penalties per game. This officiating is all about judgment. So there is never, when you're talking about 120 some odd officials, 130 officials, they're never going to be exactly the same and exactly consistent when it comes to officiating. But give Hockley and his crew a plus, man, because all those calls, while you could hear Philip Rivers in the background chirping, which, by the way, he has a tendency to do. But you could hear him, but he said, what, a play actually with no penalties? He was shocked. I say heck of a job by Sean Hockley and his crew. So that's my opening call for today. But let's go to Rivers. Let's talk about Rivers, because a big play in the Packer game, pass fumble play, ruled on the field as a fumble. No whistle blew. Players kind of stopped, but Green Bay picked up the ball and ran all the way for a touchdown. Then it got reviewed. Dean, tell us about the review.
Yeah, well, let's start with on the field. And we know that it's most of the time it's the referee that's going to make that call, the pass fumble call. And on the field, if the referee makes that an incomplete pass, right, it's over. The best you can do is give Green Bay the football if they recover it. So if there's any doubt, you want to let it play out. Rule on what you see, but if you can't make a clear-cut ruling, let it play out. And that's what they did. And that was the right decision. And then it goes to replay. And this, while first glance, it clearly looked like a forward pass. It looked like Rivers' hand was going forward. The ball ended up going forward downfield, bounced a couple of times before Green Bay picked it up. As you start to look at the replays, and we were kind of talking about it as it was going on, man, that's close. What do you think? Is this a pass? Is the hand going forward? And it was really, really close. I do believe that it was the hand. Remember, it just any forward movement. It could be an inch with control, starts that forward passing motion. And I did feel that it did come forward with control, but it was really, really close.
But the shot, Dean, to me, the shot that made us take a deep breath, and when you said the shot from behind, I mean, that's not a good shot to use. Yeah, you can see the hand kind of come off the ball a bit when he's before it leaves his hand, but you really can't tell where is it in relationship to the hand going forward or not. But I mean, it's interesting because Joe and Troy both now that's a forward pass. I mean, that's a forward pass. There's no question it's a forward pass. And yet when you do see that shot from behind, it does question you a little bit. But I'm a little bit like you, because you see the defender's arm hit Rivers, Smith's arm hits Rivers' arm there. But I mean, I like you. I think it's forward, but awfully close.
Yeah, and that shot from behind, what that does, the shot from behind, usually when it is a fumble, that's a good look to confirm the hand, right? The ball coming off the hand. And I would agree that hand coming forward, typically you're going to look for more of a sideline angle. Moving to a similar play, different game, Baltimore and Tennessee, not as critical a juncture of the game. This was toward the end of the first half, inside of 2 minutes. Ryan Tannehill was hit. Ball came out, ended up going forward and out of bounds, ruled a fumble on the field. Tennessee's going to maintain possession. But what did you see on this one?
Well, I don't see a lot of difference. I mean, I don't see a lot of difference between the one with Philip Rivers. To me, to me, the hand is again going forward, and the ball gets knocked out. And to me, this is, I mean, I see it as incomplete. I mean, I think if Rivers is an incomplete pass and a forward pass, then I think this has to be too. And again, same reasoning. This is the one the Rivers play, they reversed. This one they did not. They left it as a fumble. But I tell you, I don't see a difference. And when you talk about consistency, I mean, consistency, it's easier to accept the notion that you ought to be consistent because basically one person, maybe two, are making the decisions in replay in New York. There's really not much input from the referee and not a lot of input from the replay official on site either. But, to me, Dean, either they're both passes or they're both fumbles, but I just don't see a difference here.
Yeah, I agree. Maybe a slight difference in that in the Tannehill play, maybe the defender just catches a piece of the football where Rivers, it was just his arm. But to me, Tannehill's hand is coming forward with control. The ball clearly goes forward. A lot of people were questioning, well, why couldn't Tennessee challenge that? Well, it was inside 2 minutes, so it would have to be a replay official stoppage. They didn't stop the game for a formal review. They obviously looked at it because it's a reviewable aspect, and replay officials responsible for that window of time after the 2-minute warning. But they ultimately felt they weren't going to change it, so they did not go with a formal review. I think it's a pass. To me, the hand comes forward. I think when you talk about that consistency element, that's why we went to command center review, right? Art McNally Game Day Central review to take a decision-making process from 17 people all over the country to a smaller group of 2 to 3 people, where you would hope that you could be more consistent. And again, for the most part, it has been more consistent. I think when you look at these two plays, it's tough to find a difference. And here's the deal on that one. Baltimore's not getting the football, but by ruling it a fumble, Tennessee, the ball came back to the spot of the fumble, which was an 8-yard difference. Now it was 3rd and long, about 3rd and 18 versus 3rd and 10 had it been ruled a forward pass. So a big play, they can't convert, and they end up having to kick a field goal. So interesting play there.
Razzle dazzle by the Lions. Wait a minute. Does that go together? Razzle dazzle and the Lions? But a crazy play yesterday, a 51-yard touchdown pass on a reverse, back to Stafford, boom, touchdown pass, negated by an illegal formation penalty. Dean, your thoughts?
Yeah, and as an honorary Lions fan, this was a very Lions thing to do. They weren't doing anything on offense. They were getting shut out, and they run this fantastic trick play, but the alignment was illegal from the get-go. And you watch the still frame here, and the key is going to be watch the receiver at the bottom. The receiver at the bottom, he's the widest man in the formation. So if he's on the line of scrimmage, you cannot have another eligible player on the line of scrimmage inside of him. And the tight end was also on the line. The wideout was covering up the tight end. And as soon as the ball is snapped, that's a foul, okay? They could avoid the foul by taking a timeout or whatever it may be. But once the ball is snapped, you're covering up an eligible player, that's a foul. Different from the college rule, where in college, you can cover up an eligible player, provided it's either a running play or that player doesn't go downfield and a pass is not thrown that crosses the line of scrimmage. So different, and we talked about that rule alignment earlier, different rules. NFL, you can't cover it up, an eligible player. It's a foul at the snap, and it took back the best play the Lions had in that game, and they end up getting shut out for the first time since 2009.
You know, when you have people, Dean, that ask why, okay, it would seem simple. You got an 80s number. I mean, you as a defense should know he's eligible, but we do look at it differently, right? Between the slot receiver and the tight end, because you do have numbering exceptions you could have in the NFL where 89 could report. He could report as an ineligible, and then he has to line up inside like where he is. So since there are exceptions with the tight end number there, it seems like, to me, it's a logical rule. And so the defense doesn't get tricked. But that's a question a lot of people do have.
Yeah, and it goes back to that just allows the defense to identify who the eligible players are. And like you said, when the receivers are split out and detached from the interior of the formation, it's easy. You can see they both have eligible numbers. It's easy for the defense. But when you have a tight end that's attached to that line, now you start running unbalanced lines. You start reporting as eligible. The offense can create an advantage if you allow that player to be covered up, and that's why the rule is in place. And it was a good call, and unfortunately, at the worst possible time for the Lions. Let's talk about another big call in another game. Cardinals Seahawks. This was Thursday night. Offensive holding call. The question was, did it take place in the end zone? If it's in the field of play, it's not a safety. In the end zone, it is. What happened here, Mike?
Well, and that's the key. You have to be in the end zone. Now, position of the hands, just because the hand is outside the frame does not mean that's a hold at that point. you've got to find the actual restriction, because the defender could run through it. When you actually see the left hand go out, there's the opportunity for the defense to run through this. That's not a hold at that point. It's where he actually starts to get by him and then he turns them. And that occurs to me right at the goal line or maybe in the end zone. And so therefore it would be considered a safety because that's the actual spot of the foul. Is it reviewable? Yes. I mean, as it stands now, any spot foul in the end zone that could create a safety is reviewable, whether it's a hold, whether it's an illegal forward pass, intentional grounding, it is reviewable in the NFL. So a lot of people say, well, okay, how come it wasn't reviewed? Well, it was, because since it was ruled a scoring play, can't be challenged. And so therefore they look at it. And my sense was they could confirm that they couldn't change it. So therefore they decided not to stop the game and review it beyond that, because it also is very subjective. And as the rule, not rule, but the philosophy we always talked about, if you can, make it in the field of play. Don't make it in the end zone. But in this case, the actual twist that turned the defender, to me, he was already in the end zone, and I think it's the right call.
Yeah, well, I agree that you couldn't change it in replay. And I think replay, look, like you said, it was ruled a safety. And so it's an automatic review. Replay looked at it and you weren't going to be able to change it. It is so subjective. When does that restriction actually happen? I think from a philosophical standpoint, like you mentioned, on the field, you want to make that in the field of play whenever possible. If I was evaluating this, if I was in New York looking at this, I would want my officials to put this in the field of play. I think the arm is across. I think the hold starts, like you said, it probably starts maybe right at the goal line. I don't think you could clearly say it's in or out. And when it's like that, I would prefer the on-field official to make it the less egregious of the two and put it in the field of play. But again, it is so subjective. When does the restriction occur? When does it start? It's right at the goal line, and it would not have been changed in replay, and that's ultimately why they didn't stop it. Now, if it's ruled in the field of play, now if we're outside 2 minutes, now the defense, Seattle, could challenge that and say, hey, wait a minute, that foul actually occurred in the end zone. We think it's a safety. So it could be challengeable the other way if we're outside 2 minutes. So interesting situation in that game.
Interesting also, Cleveland, I mean, almost pull off a tip ball, batted ball all over the place and ruled on the field as an interception and a touchback. Very close play. Your thoughts?
Yeah, this was really close. And I think ultimately the ruling on the field was interception. And when we've always talked about this, right? Whatever phrase you want to use, indisputable video evidence, indisputable visual evidence, clear and obvious, you want it to jump out to reverse. And I think this was a play where I know I didn't see enough to reverse until there was one last shot. And this is the still frame here. But there was one last shot from the end zone behind the offense. And we actually were able to blow it up and zoom in that showed the football on the ground and it was loose. Is it close? Yes, it's close. But I think without that one look, I don't think we could have overturned it in that situation, because again, the ruling on the field was an interception. I thought ultimately that one shot did give us enough, but certainly a tough play to look at when you have all those bodies in the end zone. You're trying to find the football. It was, you have shadows involved, a football that is dark color. I mean, there was just so much there, but ultimately I think that one shot was what they used to reverse the call on the field.
I just can't buy it. I mean, if we're looking for 14 different shots and then we got to look through somebody's legs and you see a ball that touches the ground, can you see both hands of the Cleveland player? No. I just think, where are we going to this? I mean, we got to search this long to overrule an official, Brad Freeman, who had a perfect look, by the way. He had a perfect look and was very decisive. I mean, we got replay, blowing up things, blowing up big to where nobody else could see him that way. Where's the clear and obvious? I mean, if that wasn't stopped, if we were in the olden days, I guess, nobody would say a thing. But it's like to me, when I kept watching all those replays, and I just feel like if we've got to go through that and see the ball touches the ground, and is maybe, or the one hand maybe still in the ball. There's too many maybes to me. It's not clear and obvious. And I hate to see replay get so technical and overrule an official who has such a good look. And that's just I mean, look at the left hand. It's just my feeling. If we got to go 14 times and then blow it up to huge to make the football the size of the Goodyear blimp to see it hit the ground, then I think we're overdoing it. I personally would still love to have seen that stay as an interception, but that is just me, Dean.
That is spoken like that's Mike on his lawn. The kids are playing, baseball in the street. Right. The ball comes on his lawn and he grabs it, puts it in the pile of footballs and soccer balls that he's stolen from these poor kids. Right. And he says, get off my lawn, you young whippersnappers. That was Pereira's moment right there.
Never said that to any kids on my
The olden days. Mike,
kind.
Other than two technical replay reviews, Thanksgiving is coming up. What are you thankful for?
Well, I'm thankful that the holiday season is almost here and gone, because I'm so ready to get to 2021. I mean, I feel so bad for so many people that have suffered through so many parts of this year, whether it is the COVID itself and the illness, whether it is the economy and what it's done to your job. I think we as a generation, have faced difficulties that, we're past the Depression era. This is like the most unbelievable thing, and the suffering that has gone through this whole thing. So I'm so thankful for those that, are the first responders and those that are fighting this in the hospitals. And I just am thankful for everybody that has, put these on to try to prevent the spread. And even though it became political, as I walk around Los Angeles now, and it's just as bad here as anywhere else, people are getting the message. They're getting the message, and they're doing what we can to stop this. It's a race. The vaccine is coming. So I'm thankful, though, that until it gets here, that people who have endured such agony are getting with the program, and hopefully 2021 turns out to be a hell of a lot better than 2020. So that's what I'm thankful for. Dean, you.
Well, and I agree with everything you just said. It has been such an unbelievable year on so many different levels. And I talked last week in my opening comments just about how amazing it is we're at this point, right? We've played now 11 weeks of NFL football with the game tonight. And I'm just thankful for, my family. There have been so many people that have been impacted by this, so much more than myself. And I'm just thankful that I've had the ability to continue to be a part of Fox Sports and do what we do while, like you said, other people are out there. And whether it's in the hospitals, whether it's just somebody that goes to work every day in a grocery store that has to put themselves at risk so that we can have groceries and food on our table and things like that. There's so many people that are out there that are so much, that are affected so more so than myself. So I'm thankful for those people. I'm thankful for the blessings that I have. I'm thankful that you're wearing a mask, even though we're not in the same room, because then I can't see your mouth move. And I'm also thankful that this is the end of Last Call. This is it. It's over. We will be back next week. And please, we got Thursday Night Football. We got a great slate. We got Thanksgiving Day. Mike will be on the game. And then we've got a great slate of games on Sunday. So check us out next week and watch a lot of football, and don't eat too much on Thursday.
Thanksgiving Day. The tradition on Fox continues when we come together to be thankful for food, for family, and for football.
And here we go.
It's the classic NFC East matchup.
We get set on Thanksgiving.
Alex Smith in Washington.
Wow.
Take on Zeke and the Cowboys.
Touchdown! Unbelievable!
Celebrate this special day with the game we all love. Thanksgiving Day on Fox. all part of Fox Football Feast.